What will it take to really make you happy? What's it take to make you happy? Now, I've told you the story before. I used to live in Mississippi before I moved up here. And the Saints had just won the Super Bowl. And Nathan was only maybe second or third grade or so. And he came crying into my room one day, and I thought, we've got something terrible. You know, this is the middle of the night, and he was crying. And I thought, bad dream or whatever else. And I said, Nathan, what's wrong? And he said, why can't we ever like a team that wins like the Saints? You know, he was upset because I'd always been a Cowboys fan, and as a good Christian, I trained my children to be Cowboys fans. And he said, why can't we ever like a team that wins? And I thought to myself, the Saints have never won, you know. That one year with Drew Brees, you know, the whole hurricane thing, they let them win. But, you know, the question is, what would it take to make you happy? Would it be a sports team? Would it be $1 million, which is not what it used to be, but it's still better than what I got, right? Would it take good health? Would it take the perfect family member? Finally got these kids behaving, you know? What does it take to make you happy? And so in chapter 2, as we get started, what Solomon's going to do is he's going to look at the 4 keys to happiness actually that don't work. Each one of these keys, you stick in the lock and turn, it's not going to work, but everybody just assumes that they are. And so that's what we're going to run through and we're going to look at as we go through. So you can see pretty easy the 4 things: pursuit of pleasure, pursuit of accomplishment. Hey, if I do these great things, everybody will know me and love me. Pursuit of wisdom and education, and the pursuit or vanity of labor. Man, I want to work and get all these things done. So that's what we go. Now, if I had written a Bible, I would start off verse 1 of chapter 2. I said to myself, self? You know, he's talking to himself, right? Okay, I had a physics teacher one time in high school who told me it's okay to talk to yourself as long as you don't argue. And it's really bad if you start losing the arguments. And so he's talking to himself here, and he says, I said in my heart, come now. Let's read the first 3 verses. Said in my heart, come now, I'll test you with myrrh. Therefore enjoy pleasure, but surely this also is vanity. I said of laughter, it's madness, and of myrrh, what does it accomplish? I searched my heart how to gratify my flesh with wine, while guiding my heart with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the sons of men to do under heaven all the days of their life. All right, so he decides the first thing that it would take to be happy: pleasure. I need to go do something that just makes me feel good, okay? Maybe a good steak, maybe a bubble bath, maybe a good vacation to the beach, maybe going to Disney. Pursuit of something that you love, something that you enjoy. That's this thing, this lighthearted approach to life where you just love life. Everything is taken care of. Everything is great. What's the issue if that is the key to your happy life? What happens in every vacation besides you going broke? What happens every vacation? The last day comes and now you got to go home, right? Okay? Disney's great until the day in which you have to come home, all right? That steak is good until you've eaten it and you wait a day or so and then you're hungry again. And so he finds it to be vanity. And he says, you know, seeking good things, seeking pleasure is not wrong, but it's not something that really brings joy. Now, a very little tidbit, maybe a small detail here. In verse 3, you see where he is looking to gratify his flesh with wine. As you look at the key there, and really this is not saying it's good to drink alcohol or it's bad to drink alcohol necessarily. You can see several passages in the Bible which warn you about alcohol. But what he's using this here for is not drunkenness, because he's realized drunkenness doesn't make you happy. It makes you pretty miserable. But he is, that idea of taking wine is that idea of getting yourself buzzed. Maybe taking just enough medicine, just enough drug, just enough alcohol, where you have that heightened feeling which is there. Yes, sir?
Basically, what I see here, he's trying to hide himself in the bottle.
Yeah. You try to just drink until you hide all your problems and you're just not thinking about them. Right. And that's a common thing. What you got, Debbie?
Or just finding the answers he's looking for in that. Just, maybe finding a solution to what he's trying to figure out. So people turn to that.
Yeah, well, some people are looking for the solution to life. Maybe alcohol, maybe medication, maybe drugs, maybe some sort of physical pleasure. A lot of people think, man, if I just did this, I'd feel so relaxed. It'll be good. Lower the inhibitions and everything will be better. And that's a little bit of what he's seeing here. But what happens is when you seek to make everything better with pleasure, first of all, the time comes to an end, right? You either run out of the whiskey in the bottle or you have the hangover. Vacation comes to an end. You finish the food and now it's time to think about what you're going to have for your next meal. Life should be filled with pleasure. We should enjoy the days that we're on this earth. We'll get to that in chapter 4. You should enjoy the days, but that's not the key to your identity, who you are. That's not the key of how you're going to find fulfillment. And so you'll find some people who think, man, if I just go on vacation often enough, my life will be good. And it's not quite the case there, is it? Not quite the case of what we're looking for. So that didn't work. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to hit that. That didn't work. So now let's go to verse 4. We'll read verses 4 through 11. Beginning of verse 4, I made my works great. I built myself houses and planted myself vineyards. I made myself gardens and orchards and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made myself water pools from which to water the growing trees of the grove. I acquired male and female servants, and I had servants born in my house. Yes, I had greater possessions of herds and flocks than everybody who is in Jerusalem before me. I also gathered myself silver and gold and all the special treasures of kings and the provinces. I acquired male and female singers, the lights of sons and men, and musical instruments of all kinds. So I became great and excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. And whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep them from me. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart rejoiced in my labor, and this is a reward from all my labor. And then I looked on all the works that my hands had done, and on the labor which I had toiled, and indeed all was vanity, grasping for the wind. There was no profit under the sun. Now, you don't notice it in our language so much, but the words he uses kind of go back to Genesis 1. I built, I made, I did this, I acquired. A lot of that sounds similar to God when he's creating the earth. And he goes through and he begins creating all these great things. Now, easy question. What are some of the things Solomon made? Temple. Absolutely. That's probably the big one, right? And as you read 1 Chronicles chapter 1 through 3, maybe chapter 4 a little bit, you see where he begins creating this temple, and this temple was a big deal. A lot of times we don't talk about how big of a deal it was, but this temple, when it was built, was probably one of the largest man-made things upon the earth. Pyramids were a little bit taller. Some of the temples in Greece really didn't measure up to what Solomon built. It was a huge structure. Back then, when you had something as tall as this, yes, sir, Dan, what you got?
He built up a big army with horses, too.
Yeah, you got horses.
Looked great.
Absolutely, yeah. Remind me, because we got to go back to that. But this temple, there's gold everywhere, silver everywhere, everything's expensive. He had the workmen work off-site as they shaped everything to fit together, as they prepared it to where the tenon and joints would fit together. They did all that off-site and then took it back apart to bring to Jerusalem so everything could be put together in silence. You couldn't hear a hammer anywhere, because Solomon wanted this place to be so holy and so special that he didn't have all the construction noise. So this is a neat thing. And then after he built the temple, right next door to it, he built his house. And what was the issue with this house? Sometimes it's been a while since we got to 1 Chronicles 5.
Bigger than the temple.
The house is bigger than the temple. Whoops. Okay. So he builds even a greater house. And he begins building all these things to where he has the top city in the world. It is a great place that he has. everything coming along. And then, as Dan said, he starts building stables for horses. Now, for us, not a big deal. And I haven't heard a lot of sermons in Kentucky about horses. I remember growing up in Texas, you always heard about horses. And what I mean was, it was illegal for an Israelite to have a horse. You remember in Deuteronomy and also in the book of Numbers? God said, I do not want you to have horses for war. Now, why would that be? A horse and a chariot was like the Abrams tank of the day. And God wanted Israel to rely upon God rather than their military hardware. And so back in the days of David and back in the days of Samuel and back in the days of Judges, they would fight Sisera and his 900 chariots, but they would not have chariots and horses themselves. God always gave them the victory over those horses. Solomon, as he is coming through, because of influence or whatever, he begins acquiring horses. He acquires a huge army with the chariots. And there are different places where people have still dug up, even this day, the stables where he kept all of his horses. And that's how major that complex was. But Solomon goes beyond what God allowed because he is trying to have the largest army. And he's trying to have the largest house. He is trying to show that his God's the biggest God by creating the biggest temple. And he creates all this stuff. And what's it worth? Nothing. It's worth nothing. I've used this illustration before as well, but do you remember days ago, years ago, I guess it would be, when every year there was the hot item for Christmas? Okay? I think of some of the hot items. What would they be? You remember the Tickle Me Elmo? It's the creepiest gift ever, right? Okay? Cabbage Patch Dolls. Yes! You got to have your Cabbage Patch Dolls. All right? Huh? The what? Furbies. Yes, you got to have the Furbies. Yeah. What you got? The Furbies or the Cabbage Patch Dolls?
I went early to Walmart, at the 5 o'clock, whatever, to get them for my grandsons. And they didn't care anything about them.
I hear you.
But she did.
Yeah, right. There were these things, and like on the news, you would watch. A lot of times there's these ladies, and they would be beating the pulp out of each other to get the last Tickle Me Elbow, or the last Furby Elmo, or the last Furby, or whatever it may be. Don't tickle me elbows. We're Elmo people. All right. So you look at that. People got that gift, and 6 months later, what did they care about that gift? It doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. Doesn't matter anywhere close to what it used to. And that's kind of what's going on with Solomon. He builds a temple, and the temple's pretty awesome. But after you've built this temple for 13 years and worked on it every day, you're done. Okay, well, we'll build a house. Okay, after that's done, there you are. And so here's these accomplishments, these great things that he's thinking he's pulling off, that he's doing, and he does not find greatness in those accomplishments. Now, he does find joy in the labor, and that's one thing we're going to notice in life. You find joy when you have purpose. When you're working a job, when you're working for a mission, trying to accomplish something, a lot of times we can find great joy and great purpose in that, but there we are. That's what we're stuck with. Okay, now 12 through 17, pursuit of wisdom. Then I turned to myself to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do who succeeds the king? Only what's been done before. Then I saw that wisdom excels folly, as light excels darkness. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. Yet I perceived myself that the same event happens to them all. Verse 15, so I said to my heart, as it happens to the fool, it also happens to me. And why was I then more wise? And I said in my heart, this also is vanity. For there is no more remembrance of the wise and of the fool forever. Since all that now is forgotten will be forgotten in days to come, how does a wise man die? Just like the fool. Therefore I hated life, because the work that was done under the sun was distressing to me, for all is vanity and grasping in the wind. We are in the information age. Now, we rename it every few years, but we went through the Iron Age, the Bronze Age. A little bit later, we went through the Industrial Age, right? We went through the Tech Age. Now we're in the Information Age, and we changed that around quite a bit. We may be in the AI age, the artificial intelligence age. That's part of the information age that comes. And it has changed our world, hasn't it? Way, way back when, my forefathers, 4 or 5, 6, 7 generations ago, they had these books called encyclopedias. You ever heard of those? I'm joking about that because I grew up reading the encyclopedia all the time. And those were the neatest books, right? There you go. You still got that set today. All right. You still got, is it Britannica? Which ones do you have? Okay. They used to sell them house to house, right? And, you used to buy that so that your kids could be smart. And, that whole world of information was in those 20 books right there. Do you know you can't buy encyclopedias anymore? And do you know when you try to sell your set of encyclopedias, nobody buys them. Why not? Huh? Google. All right. Now, I don't like Google the way I liked my encyclopedia because I could open up an encyclopedia and it would just give you every, you could read, about this letter and it would tell you things and, you'd read through it. It kind of helped you in all your trivia questions, right? Google, each one of us today, if you had your phone with you, and I know none of you are ever on your phone during church, but if you were, you could tell me in 30 seconds how tall the Pyramid of Giza is. Now, how in the world would you know that? 50 years ago, maybe one person would know, but it would be rare. You could tell me how much blood's in the human body. You could find out in just 15, 20 seconds. We're in the information age, knowing stuff. And because of that, in generations past, what promoted you was information, knowing information. The only people who knew how to horse a shoe, or shoe a horse. Oh boy, hey, class is almost over. We're going to make it. The only people who knew how to shoe a horse were the guys who worked on them, right? And the only person who knew, you had certain information. Now, what puts you ahead is not having the information, but knowing how to apply the information, knowing how to work the information. You remember in math class when your teacher would say, you got to do all this in your head because you're not going to have a calculator someday? Now you have a calculator. But you got to know how to take that information and to shape it in the right way. Well, that's what Solomon's talking about here. And he says, you know what? It is so much better to have wisdom than to not have wisdom. It is better to be smart than it is to be dumb. Very obvious. The life of a guy who is smart is much better than the life of a guy who is dumb. All right? But what happens to both of them? After about 75, 78 years, life's over. And that grave for the guy who has a doctorate is the same size as the grave of the fellow who never graduated high school. That grave of the guy who invented some wonderful thing, really not much is happening in that grave that doesn't happen except to the guy who, really just sat on the couch all the time. He says, we're all headed to the same place. And I know I was supposed to get a high school degree. I know I was supposed to get a college degree. But really, we're all just kind of headed to the exact same place. It's appointed to man once to die, but then the judgment. Okay? So, it's looking at backside of the page here, verse 14 and 16. Wisdom's limited. It pleases God for us to get wisdom, but it's temporal, it's temporary. Knowledge is power, but it's still mortal. Wisdom is not the key to eternal life. It is good to get wisdom, and learning helps you to praise God and to serve God better, but that's not the key. That's not where you're going to find happiness. That's where you're not going to find things. And so, look there at verse 17. I hated life. Now, this is not talking about somebody who's suicidal. but as somebody who is frustrated because they've spent their entire life building temples, building houses, gaining knowledge, and now here he is as an old man, and he realizes he wasted his life chasing things that don't matter. They just don't matter. Every one of us has 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week, 365 and a quarter days in a year. None of us have more time than anyone else. But some people are able to organize their time and accomplish a lot more. Some people waste their time and they realize at the end that their life wasn't what they wanted it to be because they didn't live the way they wanted to live. All right, now we'll close up 18 through 26. Vanity of labor. Then I hated all my labor which I toiled under the sun because, and this verse hurts, I have to leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool, yet he will rule over all my labor in which I toiled in, and in which I have shown myself under the sun. This is vanity. Therefore I turned my heart and despaired of all the labor in which I had toiled under the sun. There is a man whose labor is with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, yet he must leave his heritage to a man who has not labored for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. For what has man for all his labor and for the striving of his heart with which he has toiled under the sun? For all his days are sorrowful and his work is burdensome. Even in the night his heart takes no rest. This is vanity. Nothing is better for a man than he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw was from the hand of God. For who can eat, who can have enjoyment more than I, Solomon would say? For God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to a man who is good in his sight, but to the sinner he gives the work of gathering and collecting, so he may give it to him who is good before God. This also is vanity and a grasping for the wind. Wow, there is a lot of deep stuff right through there. Man, we could spend a lot of time. All right. Possessions are left to a fool. Possessions are left to a fool. I have things that I like, and I absolutely guarantee you my children are not anxious to inherit them. Okay? Once again, china. Remember when you used to get china at your wedding and you used to have that special china in the cabinet for special meals and stuff? For a younger generation, that doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? The culture has just changed. Some of the things which I've gathered, which I've thought, man, this is heritage, is going to matter so much. Next generation is going to see it, and they'll be like, here it is. Yeah, I don't want to throw it away because it belonged to so-and-so, but we'll find a place on the shelf maybe, or the drawer maybe. Okay? There's a saying that wealth lasts for 3 generations. I don't know if that's always true, but that's a pretty common saying. The first generation amasses immense wealth by the work and knowledge. That second generation keeps the wealth. The third generation wastes it, and it's gone. And you can kind of see that with the Vanderbilt fortune. You can kind of see that with the Carnegie fortune. You look at a lot of things, and sometimes it's said to be true. That's the bummer of life. The stuff that I think is important, I'm not going to last long enough to keep it important. How many of you grew up in a home, and then when you moved away, you sold the home to somebody else? And that home mattered so much to you, and somebody moved in and they painted it or they bricked it. Now, I'm telling you from my own personal experience. I had a house that I grew up in, Gardendale, Texas. I thought it was the greatest thing ever. It was bought from us by some people in the oil business, and what they decided to do is they turned it into little apartments for people who are working in the oil field, and so that house looks so different. And I always want to go back there. I mean, it's like 18 hours from here, so I'm not going to do it this week. But I want to go back there and say, don't you realize that this is my house, and it needs to look this way, it needs to be this way, and all these things need to be different and change whatever. Now, I haven't lived there in 30 years. But you know, the things that are important to you when you're gone, they're not important anymore. And that is the problem that happens when I put my identity in my possessions. When my car and my house and my things I have in my house is what I see as important and what identifies me. Because other people aren't going to see those things the very same way. and they're going to change, and they're going to move those things around and all those things. So that's one of those things that's pretty interesting. Hard work's not wrong. We got to provide for those. If a man will not work, neither let him what? Eat. Okay. Every person needs to add to society and not just take from society. Okay. But verse 21, you work and work and work, and then you die, and it all goes to someone else. You work and work and work, and you get all this stuff, and then someone else who doesn't deserve it, someone else who doesn't appreciate it, is going to inherit it. Like I said, it is a dark book that we're reading here. And it hurts because as you read it, you're like, man, he's right, And so when you realize that doesn't mean just stop working. Doesn't mean stop collecting things that are important to you. But it means in verse 24, take advantage of time in your life. Your kids, if you have kids at home, are never going to be the same age as they are right now. And you may have a 5 or 6 year old who's just starting to play t-ball. And, you may be thinking, man, here we go. We got to get the, uniform and the baseball bat and the glove and all this different stuff. Enjoy that moment because it will never happen again. Enjoy the moment when your kids are teenagers. I know that's hard because it'll never happen again. Enjoy this day because you don't know what your health is going to be like tomorrow. James puts it this way, our life is nothing more than a vapor. And so what Solomon is saying is, instead of thinking, man, if I just had $1 million and I would be happy, or man, if I just had the biggest house on the block, I would be happy, or man, if I had those tickle me Elmos, I would be happy. Enjoy life. Enjoy what God has given you today because no one else may enjoy what you enjoy. And so this day is a gift, and that cheesy phrase, that's why they call it the present, right? Today is your gift. Today is the day in which you need to live. Okay, and so 24 to 27, oh boy, here's the vanity. The heart of the book is repeated over and over and over. Nothing better for you to do today than enjoy your food that you're about to have, enjoy the drink you're about to have, and enjoy the result of your labor. God has given you the talent and the ability and the blessings to have what you have. And it is, I want to say it's a sin. It's a sin to take that for granted and just while away everything, hoping for something better tomorrow. Because when you reach the end of life, you're going to long for the day like today. And so enjoy the day which God has given you, and that's the fulfillment which is coming. Now, verse 26. God uses the wicked to ultimately gather goods for the wise. That's an interesting passage right there. God sent Joseph to Egypt. Joseph was given a dream in which Pharaoh was able to unify his nation and become the richest nation upon the earth. Why did God do that for Egypt? Because in 400 years, guess what? Israel was going to need money as they traveled through the wilderness. They were going to need money to build a great tabernacle. They were going to need money as they entered into a new land and built the things that they wanted. And so God used those evil people to bring that fortune somewhere else. And there's a lot of times when God uses people who don't love him, and God blesses people who are not good, and he's allowing them to accumulate fortunes because he's going to use it in that same way someday to accomplish something good with what they've worked with and what they've had. That's really interesting in my mind when I go through and I think about how God is doing it that way. And then I come back to today and I realize, God is working in ways in which I don't expect and I don't know. But God is working. And I can't control God and I can't make God move one way or the other. But what I can do is realize he's in my life and I need to enjoy what I've got. All right, so closing up the lesson, the 4 keys that will not open the door of happiness: pleasure, your accomplishment, building great things, wisdom, and labor. But what will open that key, Not the big lock, that's not till chapter 12, seeking God, keeping his commandments. But what will open that key for today is take advantage of this day that God has given you. Don't waste it. You only have one day like today, so enjoy it. All right, any final comments? You are ready to get out early, huh? Yeah, Paul himself would say, I've learned to be content in every circumstance, whether hungry, thirsty, naked. I've learned to always be content. Absolutely. Any other comment? Yes, AI, artificial intelligence.
So scary. Because regular people like us, you don't have any idea how to tell the difference. What's true and what's artificial.
Absolutely. Yeah, what Regina is saying is artificial intelligence is changing the game, right? Because you can watch a video of someone or watch a picture of someone and you don't know if it's true or not. A million preachers, now I'm not savvy in that way yet. I had probably not headed that way. But a lot of preachers now use AI to create their PowerPoint slides. And they create themselves. You can pay, I think, $50 to Grok or other people, and they will give you a headshot or a picture of you from a combination of about 20 different pictures, and then they make you look pretty. And I always laugh at all the preachers who do it because they're all so skinny you can't recognize them in AI because they keep pushing the skinny button, I think. You know? But you're right. It's a fearful day because the question is, what's it going to be like? What's this world going to be like? There is a book written by a guy named Stephen Ambrose, and it's called Nothing Like It in the World, and it's talking about the Transcontinental Railroad. And in the 1840s, when they were getting it together, getting the train to go, there was a lot of fear because the prevailing belief of the day was if you made a human body go more than 40 miles an hour, that body would stop functioning and you would die because everybody they threw off a cliff died. And so they thought, if you go over 40 miles an hour, that's it for you. Now, I've seen some drivers where it looks like that could be true. But you know, what's scary about the future is we haven't yet seen the future. But there's a lot of scary stuff that happens because of propaganda. You know, people can influence you because you see someone doing something, whether it's good or terrible, and you think it's true. You think that's absolutely gospel truth, which is there. It's scary because the way in which you make a living and the way in which we are successful in life now looks like it may go a different direction through coding or whatever. A lot of jobs are going to disappear, but a lot of jobs will also be created. So, yeah, it's scary when you look at that and have those ideas which are there. I always love how Stephen Ambrose would say how scared people would be if you ever got over 40 miles an hour. So for a lot of times, one of the reasons why our train gauges are that way was it was kind of designed to keep a train at a certain speed.